That's a nice crowd. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
They love you here, President Trump. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. And it's an honor to be here. This is a nice group. This is a nice group. We just left Pennsylvania. We had a big rally and a big speech. And I said, okay, that's it for the day, right? No, sir, you're going to D.C. now. Congratulations. So it's when I heard exactly the group, I knew it anyway. But when they reminded me this was it, this is so important. The job you've done is incredible, really. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Mr. President, we just want to say how thankful we are that you're doing okay. What a scary day that was in Pennsylvania, and you are looking great, and we're so happy that you were able to join us. You and I were talking a little bit backstage, and you were sharing with me a lot of the concerns you have about the border and what you're seeing happen with illegal immigrants across the United States. And I thought I'd give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that to start off.
Sure, because you're talking about moms and you're talking about family, such a big factor for you, just about everything. And when you look at what's happening in our country, this is so tough. You know, it's one thing you don't drill oil or you don't do something that you can do with a new group coming in, but millions and millions of people, 21 million people, I think the real number is, that you hear 13, 14, 15, like that's not a big number, but it is, but 21 million people. And many of these people are criminals. Many of these people are coming out of the roughest countries in the world, and they're coming from all over the world. They're not just coming from South America. You know, everyone thinks they're coming from like Guatemala, El Salvador. They're coming from Mexico. They're coming from everywhere. I was speaking to the Border Patrol. They said in the last 12 months, 159 different countries were represented by people having come in illegally. And that's some number. But these are tough people. They're coming out of the jails. They're coming out of the mental institutions. They're coming out of prisons. And they're coming, I mean, they're just coming out of, there's a difference between a prison and jail. It's subtle. But I say that they come out of mental institutions and insane asylums. There's a difference there also. And they're coming into our country at levels that nobody's ever seen. And I've been saying for 2 years that this has got to stop. I've been saying for longer than that, but for 2.5, 3 years, I said this has to stop. And now it's catching up with us. And you see what's going on in Colorado. I don't know if anybody got to see Aurora. I mean, they're taking over the city. They're taking over apartment complexes. These are young, very tough people. These are tough. They make our criminals look nice. That's the only thing good about them. Our criminals are like nice people by comparison. And if you saw the Colorado thing, and this is happening all over, just not Colorado, but the Colorado thing caught the imagination because there were many of them with the biggest weapons that you've ever seen. And these came from Venezuela, which is emptying out all of its criminals. You know, Venezuela crime is down like 72% because they're bringing all of their criminals from Caracas and everywhere else. They're bringing them to the beautiful USA. Thank you very much, Venezuela. We appreciate it. And we're allowing it to happen because we have open borders. And again, this is happening with every continent. We have Africa well represented, coming out from the Congo. 22 people came in recently from the Congo. Where do you come from? We come from prison. What did you do to get into prison? We will not tell you. Bad stuff. And we have them here. No intention of bringing them back. None whatsoever. And they're all over the country. But now what they're doing, you know, if you think 21 million, so if you say a certain large percentage of them are bad, because when you empty out your prisons and you empty out your mental institutions, it's a lot of people. It's bigger than most armies are in our country, if you add them up totally. So we had 159 countries, let's say, but we have massive numbers of people. And what happened in Aurora today is incredible because they basically have just taken over a swath and a building, and the people are petrified. The people living in the building, they're leaving. And when they tell the police about it. I mean, the police, you know, they don't need AK-47s. That's a very powerful weapon. I learned a lot about weapons over the last 6 weeks, I will tell you. There's a big difference between different weapons. But they're coming in with very powerful weapons. And the police, you know, you have a few policemen that are saying, wait a minute, we're totally outnumbered. Plus they have guns that are, you know, many times the power of what we carry. We don't carry rifles and machine guns and things like they're wielding around pretty freely and know how to use them. And this is affecting our schools because we want to talk about schools. And they're taking over schools. We have MS-13 gangs. They're the toughest gangs, they say, in the world, probably are. I got them out by the thousands. I took them out by the thousands. Obama couldn't get them out because the country wouldn't allow them to come back in. They were putting airplanes, big airplanes on the runway so you couldn't land the planes. They'd have to come back to the United States loaded up with these same people that they were supposed to take out. And I got them to take them by stopping aid, $750 million to different countries. And I won't go through this or too much, but basically I said, how much money do we pay to Guatemala and to a few other countries? And the number was $750 million, which is a lot, but it's not that much. We give so much money away, it's so crazy, to countries that hate us. By the way, we give a lot of money away every year to Afghanistan. Billions and billions of dollars. And I think that Harris and Biden, I always start now by Harris, a Marxist. She's a Marxist, by the way. People are finding that out. But she's a total Marxist. Her father's a Marxist. He's a Marxist professor. He teaches, I guess, the economy from a Marxist perspective, and he taught her well. But when you look at what was happening, you couldn't get the people out. And when I said, you're going to get these people out of here, the general came to me, sir, they won't take them back. Who won't take them back? The countries from where they came. And they would put airplanes on the runway. They block up the bus routes. They block up everything. So we'd bring them back, and you couldn't bring them back, Tiffany. So it's such a horrible thing. And I said, how much aid do we pay them, sir? We pay them $750 million combined. I say, that's a lot of money. That's a lot. Well, tell them we're not paying them anymore. It's effective immediately. Yes, sir. And they told them that. And the following morning, I come into the beautiful Oval Office, that Resolute desk, which is so beautiful. You know, now Biden goes around using that. He didn't even know the name of the Resolute desk. Now he tells, I sit behind the Resolute desk. He doesn't even know what the hell it is, this guy. That's a beauty. Boy, I tell you, did they do a coup on him? Anyway, so I said, tell him that's not happening. So the following morning, I get to the office and I get a call from 3 countries, let's not use names, and all very smart leaders. I'd be doing the same thing if I were them, to tell you the truth. I'd say, empty out my prisons, dump them into the United States. Don't ever let them back. And I would be doing it every bit as much as them. I don't blame them if they can get away with it, but they shouldn't be able to get away with it. So I said, you're not going to get the money. They call me up. They say, sir, I understand. And I know all 3 of them. I know all of them. I know all the leaders. They're all at the top of their game. And we have a bunch of dead weights, okay? We are being taken advantage of as a country so much. I've never seen anything like it. So they said, essentially the same conversation. Sir, good morning, sir. I understand there's a problem, sir. You have to understand, this has gone on for 10 years. They wouldn't take their people back. They wouldn't take MS-13 back. They dumped them in our country, wouldn't take them back. I said, well, you know, you're sending them up in the caravans and other ways, and you're not taking them back. You're never getting any more money from the United States. Sir, we would like to take them back. We would love to have MS-13 back with us. We think they're such wonderful people. Anyway, they made it very easy for us to get them back, and we took them back by the thousands, and we took also a lot of others back. And then these clowns took over the country, and everything closed up. And by the way, they're paying them now $4 billion, I understand. Can you believe it? And they don't take them back. It's just so sad to see what happens. They're paying much more money than I was talking about. They raised it. They actually felt it was good to pay them more. They said, why? They said, economic development. It's not economic development, it's the development of a dictator. Because they keep the money, they're not doing any economic development. We have the dumbest people in history running our country, okay? The dumbest in history. And we have to get these people, so we brought it back at all, but what's happening to our country is being poisoned, and your schools and your children are suffering greatly because they're going into the classrooms, they're taking the seats, and they don't even speak English. It's crazy. And we have our people that aren't going into a classroom. We have students that were there last year. They're not allowed into the school this year. They're not allowed. It's crazy. We have our veterans sleeping on the streets, and we have illegal immigrants coming into our country living in luxury hotels above where the veterans are. It's so reverse of what it should be.
So I know you love New York City. I'm from New York originally. My dad grew up in Brooklyn in Flatbush. Yeah, New York. But like many other cities in America right now, it's a city in decline. You were in New York when Mayor Giuliani really did great reforms.
Right. He was such a great mayor. And, he also fought for a lot of things that he should. Hey, he was right about the laptop from hell. He was the one that came out. Rudy was right. Rudy was right about a lot of things. They have a hat. Trump was right about everything. But Rudy was right about a hell of a lot. He was right. He was the first one to see the laptop, I guess. And he revealed what was on there, and everyone hit him hard. He's actually a very brave guy, but he was a great mayor, and he took over the city when it was in really bad shape and very dangerous, and he made it the safest big city in the country, and made it beyond that. It was a vibrant city, and now it's got tremendous problems. And in all fairness, look, you have hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants here. How do you do it? You can't run it. I read where they're spending billions of dollars. I thought New York had no money, and yet they're spending billions of dollars of money, and it's not given by the federal government. So how are they doing this? The city is suffering, and they're all suffering. No city can take in, when you think that 21 million people came into our country, that's bigger than New York. 21 million people came into our country. No country can take that. Nobody can withstand that. It's going to bring us down. And in addition to that, many of these people are hard criminals. And we have to get them out, and we're going to have deportation at the highest level we've ever had. As a higher level, the highest people came into our country. No country can take that. Nobody can withstand that. It's going to bring us down. And in addition to that, many of these people are hard criminals. And we have to get them out, and we're going to have deportation at the highest level we've ever had. As a higher level, the highest deportation was a pretty moderate guy, but Dwight Eisenhower, he hated that our country was being swamped. And Dwight D. Eisenhower, president of the United States, a good president, good general. He won because he's a general. And, generals, by the way, I don't know, a little statistic. So of the presidents, 92% were politicians, and 8%, before me, 8% were generals. And then I came along. And I don't think any rich guy will ever do it. They're looking at Trump, they're saying, I don't know. They all wanted to do it. They said, if Trump can do it, I can do it, I can do it. But they see what you have to go through. They're saying, maybe I won't give it a shot.
So let's talk a little bit about family, because we really feel at Moms for Liberty that family and parental rights are under attack in America. Yeah. All of America got to meet your granddaughter, Kai, at the Republican National Convention. It's very obvious that you love being a father and a grandfather. So I'd love to know why you choose and continue to choose to work with your children in business and politics. And do you have any advice for people with working with your kids?
Well, I've always liked it. I don't know that I'll be doing it very much politically because I think it's been very unfair to them. Like, Ivanka was she could have done anything. Great student, great, beautiful girl, beautiful everything. She was a perfect person, worked hard. She She gave up. Do you remember the Ivanka line and all?
I loved those shoes. Please tell your daughter. She made great shoes.
She was making so much money with that thing. I was saying, what the hell is going on? It was so hot. And then I ran for politics. And the truth is, she wanted to come. She pretty much gave it up. It was really good. Great shoes, great everything. Very stylish, and a lot of people still talk about it. But she gave it up because she wanted to go, and she didn't want something like the United Nations secretary. I wanted her to do that. I said, you would be a great ambassador to the United Nations secretary. There'd be nobody to compete with her. I tell you, she may be my daughter, but nobody could have competed with her rat-tat-tat, the whole deal she's got. And she said, Daddy, I don't want to do that. I just want to help people get jobs. And she would go around, not a glamorous job, but she felt so good about it. She would go around to see Walmart, to see Exxon, to see all these big companies, to hire people. And she had hired like millions of people during the course of her stay. And I mean, always there was nothing ever good. It was just very tough. I think if she were a Democrat, it would have been, it's much easier to be a Democrat, let me put it that way.
Apparently you don't have to take any interviews.
That's right. You don't have to do anything. We saw that the other night. And you won't see too many more interviews. And I have a debate coming up with this one. And she didn't want to debate. She didn't want to debate. They were not happy about it, but they got the network that they wanted. This network is the worst of all. George Slopadopoulos, you know who he is. But they are the worst in terms of that. So they wanted the network. And, you know, it was like with Biden. They came to me, they wanted to do a debate. I said, isn't it a little bit early? Like, you know, we just started. Do you want to do it now? And yes, yes. And they thought that if they said it was going to be Dana Bash, who last night was extremely easy. There was no like, why aren't you doing this? Or why did you say 1,000 times that there'll be no fracking in Pennsylvania, and then all of a sudden say, oh, we'll have fracking?
It felt like a multiple choice quiz. She would give her like several answers that she could have given.
Yeah, they were feeding it to her. I was surprised, actually. I mean, I was surprised she didn't do a lot of interviews, but she's not good at it, I guess. And they knew that. They knew something that we didn't know. I think she would have been better off if she just did interviews, even if they weren't great. It would have been better than, because now everyone's watching, and now we see she's defective. She's a defective person. And we don't need another defective person as president of the United States. We just had that.
I've heard you talk about your mom in interviews before. She was obviously a very strong woman. Was she hard on you with school? Tell us about your mom a little bit.
No, she wasn't. She was great. I had a great mother, great father, very different people. My mother came from Scotland. And she came over to this country. Are there people from Scotland? You know, actually, that's hidden. Do you know that some of the biggest, smartest, most brilliant leaders in business come from Scotland, and nobody knows it? Or at least, you know, their parents came from Scotland. But Scotland did very well in this country. I'll tell you, it's very, like, we have people, and I know that one group, they're a very successful group. No, she came from Scotland, great place, and she came over just for the summer, and she was 19, I guess, and she met my father, and they had a very long marriage. I said, I'll never top you on that, Pop. You know, you always want to be a little bit better than your father if you can, a little more, and my father loved that. You know, some fathers don't like it. When you have a father that doesn't want his son to be a success, well, you got a problem with a father. But there are plenty of them. I've seen plenty of them. They make it actually hard for the son. But no, I had the opposite. I had a father that loved what was happening. But they met, they fell in love, they got married, and they were married for 6.5 decades.
Wow.
A long time. Marriage. I said, Pop, I'm not going to be able to beat you with that. But anyway, and they had just a great marriage. Very different people, but they had a great marriage, very, very strong marriage.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about The Apprentice.
Okay.
We talk a lot at Moms for Liberty that we're in the middle of a cultural revolution in America. People like to be dismissive and say it's a culture war, but truly the culture is being changed. I look at you as a president and perhaps our next president, hopefully our next president. That's right. And you are a cultural icon. So you had The Apprentice. It ran for, am I right, is it 14 seasons?
14 seasons, 12 years. Yeah, we had actually one season where it was on for 3 times during the season. That means they liked it. But it was basically 12 years and 14 seasons. Yeah.
How do you think you kept the audience that long?
Well, it just worked. I mean, we had Mark Burnett is great, a producer. He did Survivor. And he came to me, and they rented the Woolman Rink. He wanted to rent it for the finale of Survivor. So it had like this jungle setting facing New York City right in the middle of Central Park. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. And he invited me. I didn't know him, but he was a young producer. He was the producer of the Survivor. And he was hot because Survivor was a very successful show on CBS. And I went there. I said, wow, this is great. I rented him the rink, so I wanted to see it also, but he invited me. I went there, watched the show. And he said, I really invited you because I have a concept of a show. And it's sort of Survivor with the asphalt jungle aspect of it, right? The Apprentice. And he told me, and I said, wow, that's interesting. He said, I'll only use you. There's nobody else I want to do it. If you don't do it, I'm not going to do it. So I thought about it. And I had an agent from a very big agency, and he said, don't do it, you don't do it. There's never been a business show in history that's been successful. Business shows are not successful in prime time. There's never been, I guess, a business show successful. I said, well, this isn't really a business show. This is sort of a different kind of a show than a business show. It's got a little business to it, but really it's more than a business show. He said, don't do it. He was a very respected guy, actually. He was a good guy, but he told me not to do it, don't do it. And then I made the deal with ABC, and the deal was done. And then Eisner, you remember Eisner, a previous guy a while ago, he's heard about the deal, and he broke the deal. He said, I can make a better deal than that, so let's make a better deal. And I got angry about it, and so did Mark Burnett. And everybody wanted us. They wanted us. So we got a call from Jeff Zucker, of all people, from, at the time, from NBC. Then he was heading up NBC, and they were having a real drought. They hadn't had a top 10 show in a long time, and they were not doing well. And I'll never forget, we walked into his office. He took the key out of the door and threw it under the chair in Rockefeller Center. He locked the door. He said, you're locked in. We're not going to leave the room until we have a deal. So we made a deal, and ABC was not happy about it. Actually, the man from ABC that made the deal with us, the top person, I think like the president, he quit over this, and he quit. He said, we made a deal with these people, and he was second guessed by Eisner, and he actually quit, and there was a lot of anger about it, but we made a deal with NBC instead of ABC. We did have the original deal with ABC. Anyway, it goes on television, and the first week it was like at number 10, which is very, very hard. And by the way, the agent told me, you've got to break the deal. You're going to be embarrassed because you're going to have a total failure, and you're going to be embarrassed. So it goes on. It opens at 10, which is amazing. And NBC was happy because now they have a top 10 show. And then it went through various things like number 8, number 7. It got progressively better. And it finished up as the #1 show on television. I'm sitting there. Can you believe this? And, I mean, you remember. It was just the hottest.
I watched The Apprentice. We love the show, yeah.
The finale actually of that season had 42.5 million. It was second to the Super Bowl. It was always the Academy Awards, and we beat the Academy Awards. Since then, the Academy Awards has gone to hell. It's incredible. You know why? Because all they do is, political stuff. They've destroyed it. But so it finished up, and #1, and I'll never forget. And I enjoyed it. I said, I have the #1 show, and I didn't even have an agent, and so I get a call from the agent. I'll never forget, 6 o'clock in the morning, he called me. He says, I want to congratulate you. Show's #1. I said, yeah, it is. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. He said, could I come over and see you? I said, why? He said, so we could work out a fee. I said, you told me not to do it. There's no way I'm paying you a commission. You told me not. They wanted to get a commission. I said, there's no way. I said, if it was up to you, I would have never done it. I have the #1 show. You said I couldn't make it. So these are little things. But it was successful for years. It just did well. And then around the 13th, actually the 12th season, they put me into a poll with a real stiff named Mitt Romney, total stiff. This guy's bad news. He's worse than a rhino. And he was running, and they just put me into a poll. I think it was NBC, and I was watching Meet the Press, actually, and with Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd. Did you ever hear of him? He's a sleepy guy, isn't he? Sleepy Eyes, another beauty. So they put me into a poll, and in the poll, I go to #1. I'm rated #1. Romney's a distant second or third. And I was in various polls, and I kept saying, I'm always like rated #1. And I wanted to get out, but I couldn't get out of the contract because I had an apprentice. Plus, I had 2 buildings that I was finishing. I wanted to get them finished. Not good when you don't finish them. Rely on somebody else. You don't want to do it. But I said, maybe if I have a chance, I'll do it the next time. And I did it the next time I ran. And we had 17 people. It was a rather violent series of debates, if you remember, right? Rosie O'Donnell, only Rosie O'Donnell. That was a tough one. Only Rosie O'Donnell. You've said this and that. I won't use the terms. You've called women this and that and that. And a lot of it was show business related. I said, only Rosie O'Donnell. And the place went crazy. And the second question I got was Brett Baer. He said, this was a Fox one. And he said, please raise your hand if you will not support the winner of the group of 17 people, whoever wins the nomination. A couple of them I do. Do you remember that? Those were my first 2 questions. Only Rosie O'Donnell, and I raised my hand. And I said that. I was honest, and the place went crazy. So actually, they were 2 of the more interesting. They were the first 2 questions I had. I went through a lot of debates. I went through like 14, 15 debates then. Then we had the debate with crooked Hillary Clinton. Remember that one?
Oh,
that was pretty good.
Who doesn't remember that debate?
That was a pretty good one. Crooked Hillary, she was a crooked one. And we had, what? So politics has been very interesting. It never stops, right? Then we had the debate last time with Sleepy Joe Biden. How did he do? He was sharp as a tack.
I would just like to say, I thought you handled yourself so beautifully in that interview. I have to be honest.
Thank you.
For many Americans who have watched as their family members have aged and have experienced dementia, it was difficult to watch President Trump. I think there were a lot of parents that were watching with their children, and there was a moment when he had a very hard time collecting his thoughts, and I just thought that you handled it with such grace. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I was a little surprised, and I was surprised by a lot of things. So I came on the stage and I looked, and I looked at him just for a brief moment because I really didn't look at him. I didn't want to look at him. I was angry at him because I think he's done a horrible job for the country. I think he's been the worst president we've ever had, and that includes the worst vice president. She's been rated the worst vice president, and don't forget, she was last in terms of getting the job. She competed for his job, and I think they had 22 people or something, and she was the first one to quit. She bombed, and she quit, and then all of a sudden she's now running. And from my standpoint, I spent $100 million fighting Joe Biden. And even during the convention, we're only talking about Biden, and then we're not fighting him anymore. We're fighting somebody else. He got 14 million votes. I'm not saying he should have gone on, but I think it seems unfair because a lot of people did a lot better than him. Like you had a person that came in second and third and fourth, and you know, it's Bernie Sanders actually essentially came in second place, I guess, right? And so you'd say, you know, why aren't you doing a democratic process? So, you know, I'll give them some of their stuff. They are a threat to democracy. They say
that's right.
They are a threat to democracy. So she was also, she was the nastiest person to him. You know, remember she called him a racist. Yes. The bus. You remember the story of the bus? You know, yes. Fake story probably. Well, she also said, I worked at McDonald's. It turned out she didn't work at McDonald's. Did anybody see that? After an exhaustive study that took about 20 minutes, they found out she never worked there. So, you know, there's a lot of fake stuff going on. But we don't need that for a president. And our country can't stand it. We are really in trouble. We're a failing nation, whether you like it or not. And I'm sure you don't like it. But we are a very sick nation. We're a failing nation. And on top of it, we have millions of people in here that we can't have them. If they were great, but you're not going to have people where they're emptying the doors to jails and emptying the doors to mental institutions where seriously sick people are coming into our country. And no country can stand this. There's no country can stand it. So I was not happy with him because, you know, I only did it because I want to help the country. You know, I didn't need this. I had a very nice life. Some of you know, I see some of you in here, you know how you've known me for a long time, long before politics. I had a nice life. But even running again, if I thought he was good and I thought he was doing a good job, I would have been happy. But he's not. He's doing a horrible job. And, you know, he's been absent for a long time. If you go back 25 years, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the ceiling, I can tell you that. And he was not doing a job. And I've told this, and I mean it. I would have been happy if he were a great president, and I wouldn't have run. I wouldn't have run. I also wouldn't have run if I didn't think I won the election. I mean, I think we won that election by so much, by so much. If I thought I lost that election, I absolutely would, you know, I wouldn't have run because I would have lost the election. But I think we did phenomenally. I mean, honestly, we got millions of more votes than we did in the first election. We did great in the first one, we won. And I was told we got 63 million votes in the first election. I was told if we get 63 million votes, same number, there's no way we can be defeated. I got 10 or 12 million votes more than that, more than anybody had ever got. We got the most votes of anybody, of any sitting president in history. And he beat us by a whisker, and it was a terrible thing. They used COVID to cheat, and it was a terrible thing. And then I watched, and I thought it was very, very sad because of, you know, the election it brought great division to the country. But I watched, and I saw how bad things were. I saw the border, the open border, and everything. You know, I found out about the open border when we built hundreds of miles, and then we had a little bit more that I was going to add because there were certain areas that you needed it. And we had everything fabricated, very expensive wall. Those walls are expensive. They're steel, concrete, and rebar. And they have a lot of wiring in them for all sorts of security equipment. But it's very expensive stuff. It's exactly what Border Patrol wanted. They have anti-climb bars and everything on them. So we did them. It could have been erected in 3 weeks. And they kept saying, we're not going to do it. And then I realized they weren't going to do it. And they sold much of that wall for 5 cents on the dollar. So, you know, that's when I realized they actually want open borders. Because you say to yourself, who would want open borders? Who would want men playing in women's sports? I mean, just think of this stuff. Think of this stuff. No, but who would want that? All the things.
Kamala Harris, apparently.
Yeah. No, she wants it. You know, you talk about, like, cars. I'm a big fan of Elon. Elon gave me tremendous endorsement. It's good, isn't it? He's going to have to send a rocket up to get those people out of there. That's crazy. You know, he's great. I said, when are you sending a rocket up? Well, you know, Elon is a very different kind of a guy. As he thinks, he talks. Whereas a lot of people, you know, they want the words to be perfect and all, and they think less and talk more, right? With Elon, it's like, well, you know, I'm doing a new stainless steel hub that can get us around the engines much quicker because there's a problem with the type of engine going into space nowadays. And I'm hearing the... And, but in the end, I think we can have a good hookup because of the new foils that are coming up. Big. And I'm hearing everything that's going through his mind. But he is like, he's a super genius guy.
Oh, I loved that conversation that you had on Twitter. I listened to the whole thing. I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
That was, I think we're going to do another one, too. They had a number, like I heard 750 million. They had a number that was so crazy and large. And we had a good time. We talked for 2.5 hours. And yeah, it was the #1 ever. There's never been anything like it in terms of people listening or watching or whatever. But he's a great guy. But I said to him, you know, the one thing is that, and I'm a huge fan of his electric car. I think it's incredible, his car. I think what he does. And I'm a big fan of electric, but they don't go far. And they are expensive. And China does have the material. We have gasoline, more gasoline than anybody else has. I call it liquid gold. We have liquid gold. But, and electric absolutely has a place. You know, you have electric, but you have to have gasoline-powered cars and hybrid-powered cars, and maybe hydrogen is going to be next, who knows? But, you know, the things that they're proposing. You know, it's interesting. I mentioned men playing in women's sports. So the Olympics, we watched the Olympics, right? And did you see the boxing situation, right?
Yes, sir, we did.
So you had this beautiful champion Italian female boxer, and she was supposed to be very good against women. And I was watching it for some reason. I find it very interesting. And she was fighting a person that transitioned. And I wouldn't want to fight this person, but transitioned and met certain qualifications.
So can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Because Elon, you're talking about Elon Musk. Elon Musk recently did an interview with Jordan Peterson, and he talked about the fact that one of his children has decided that they're transgender. He talked about the woke mind virus. When you look at Tim Walz, who is now Kamala Harris's running partner, he has made his state a sanctuary city, sir, which means that a sanctuary state, excuse me, for children, that they can go there and have gender surgeries paid for by the government. And so I just ask you, there's been an explosion in the number of children who identify as transgender, and children are being taught that they were born in the wrong body. It's an incredibly abusive message to send. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you might be able to do as president.
Well, you can do everything. President has such power. It does. It has such power. For instance, you can close the border. You don't need a bill. You know, they keep saying, well, just give us a bill. It's just they had the worst bill I've ever seen. It was a disaster. And they wouldn't have signed it anyway, because they do want open borders. They want to have open borders. They want to have all sorts of things that almost nobody in this room wants, who I think 85, 90% of the country doesn't want if they actually
I absolutely
know about
agree
it.
with you.
But the transgender thing is incredible. Think of it. Your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation. The school decides what's going to happen with your child. And, you know, many of these childs, 15 years later, say, what the hell happened? Who did this to me? They say, who did this to me? It's incredible. Just to finish that boxing, so the Italian girl is, and the left is not a hard punch for those of you not into pugilistic affairs. But a left is just sort of a guarding punch, right? So she's fighting this person that's transgendered, and the guy, boom, hits her with a left. It was like she got hit by a horse. And then she backed up, and it was weird. She sort of like, and then he hits her with another left, and she said, that's enough, I can't take that. He ended up winning the gold medal. And there was another one who also transgendered,
and he or she ended up also winning the gold medal.
He.
Yeah. Tiffany said it, I didn't. See, I'm a politician. I have to be politically correct.
I'm a mom. I have to protect my kids.
No, but think of it. So the two people, the transgender, the whole thing is crazy. Have you seen the swimming records lately?
Oh, my goodness.
How about the weightlifting records? That's one of the best. You know, a record that was like for 18 years, they'd put a quarter of an ounce on one side, quarter of an ounce, a little bit on one, a little bit. A thing that held for 18 years. This guy walks along. What did he beat the record by? 115 pounds. It's crazy. The volleyball, where a championship volleyball player is playing against a team, and one or two of the people had transitioned, and the ball was hit so hard into the head of the other girl on the other side that she was knocked out, had a concussion, and she said, she was a championship player, like an All-American player. She said, I played volleyball all my life. I've never seen a ball travel at that speed. It's crazy. And even with all of that, they won't change. And you know what? Everyone's afraid to talk about it.
Not
even
me.
the people, not Tiffany. Not Tiffany.
We're going to fight to keep our girls safe, President Trump. We're going to fight to make sure that our girls have privacy and safety in their bathrooms, and that they have Kristi Noem, I think, said it best. She said, we will not allow mediocre men to beat extraordinary women.
Yeah. That's right. It's also very demeaning to women. I don't know how they get away with it. But the Olympics was the best thing that I've seen, because you really see when these boxers came out, it was so ridiculous. And they just go through it like nothing. And why should women have to, swimming too, why should women have to compete? Now, it was sort of hard to get in. I don't know how these two people got in, but they got in. Because in some cases, you know, they weren't allowed in, so they have a crazy standard going on. But it's so demeaning to women, and women are working so hard to, like, make a team or to make a record. And these records that are being set now by people that transitioned will not be broken.
That's right.
Maybe 1,000 years from now by a woman, I don't know. But they're not going to be broken by
You're right.
a woman. It's a very sad thing. And you know, Kamala is totally in favor. Now, she's gone away from everything. You know, she's called the greatest flip-flopper in history. She loves fracking now. She said, there will never be fracking. We will never frack. And everything that she said would do, she's now doing it. There's like 12 or 14 things. There's never been anything like this. And, you know, in one way, it makes you very dishonest, because, you know, I could see somebody throughout history, people have gone into one or two areas where there's a difference. You know, you like something and then all of a sudden but almost every single thing. In fact, we're seriously thinking about sending her tomorrow a MAGA hat, because she loves everything we're doing. So we're going to send her a nice, bright red, Make America Great Again hat.
You should do that. I loved when J.D. Vance said that he thought maybe she might come out at the debate with a blue suit and a red tie on.
That's right. That could happen. It's crazy.
So, President Trump, you know, our moms are busy women, and they have families and busy lives, right? And many of them never thought that they would get involved in politics and run. Did you ever think about running for office at other times in your lives? And then just some advice, because you come under fire a lot. Our moms are standing for things that often the media attacks them on. We'd love to get some advice from you about running for office.
Yeah, so I would say don't do it.
No, run for office. We want you to run for office.
I do say this, though. It is nastier to run as a Republican than it is. Now, I'm the ultimate, you know, I mean, they suffer from a thing called TDS. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
TDS, it's a horrible, horrible terminal disease. It destroys the mind. It destroys the mind before the body, but the body eventually goes. TDS is Trump derangement syndrome. They have it at levels. They can't even stand their life. They can't stand anything. And, you know, part of the reason is I won an election which everybody said couldn't be won. Couldn't be won for a lot of reasons. Number one, he had never done it before. You know, it's not that easy to be a politician. I mean, you have to have something. And we won. And we really did a great job. You know, we rebuilt the military. We gave the largest tax cuts ever, the largest regulation cuts. In terms of health, we did something that was amazing. We had right to try. You know, we have the greatest scientists in the world, greatest doctors in the world, greatest laboratories in the world, better than anybody else, much better than China. China's very good, but much better. Acknowledge. And we have things to fight off diseases that will not be approved for another 5 or 6 years, that people that are very sick, terminally ill, should be able to use. But there was no mechanism for doing it. And I got everybody into a room. The insurance companies didn't want to allow it because they're terminally ill. They don't want to do it because then they'll get sued for somebody dying even though they're terminally ill. The states didn't want it. The government didn't want it, the federal government. Most of all, the doctors and the labs didn't want it because they didn't want to say that we're going to try and make somebody better. They didn't get better, and now everyone's going to say whatever it is doesn't work. And I got them all into a room, everybody, and I said, here's what we're doing. You're going to sign these documents. Nobody's going to have liability. If somebody wants to come, because, you know, they'd fly to Asia, they'd fly to Europe, most of them didn't have money, they'd go home and they'd die. It was a hopeless situation. But if they had money, they'd go to Asia, they'd go to Europe. We have much better technology. And what happened is I got everybody in a room. I said, listen, there's not going to be any liability. People are going to sign a document that they're not going to sue the country, they're not going to sue the state, they're not going to sue the doctors or the medical platforms. They're not going to sue anybody. They just want the drug. And we have saved thousands and thousands of lives. It's amazing. It actually worked out differently. The drug companies now are liking it to a certain extent because it's the ultimate test. Somebody's terminally ill, and all of a sudden they get better, and it's happening with thousands. And I got that done. They've been trying for 60 years to get it done, and we got it done. They don't have to fly away. And it's really had the reverse. People were finding cures to things that when a terminally ill person, a person that's almost ready to die, goes in and starts taking something, and now all of a sudden that person gets better. It's an amazing thing, and we save thousands of lives. So we've done a lot of things, a lot of things.
We'll talk about parental rights if we could for a little bit. We're a parental rights organization. And we saw Terry McAuliffe lose his bid for governor in Virginia. Remember that?
Yeah. I actually do remember.
And he said famously that he didn't think that parents should be making decisions about what their children were learning in school. And we believe that every parent has a fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children, right? And that includes their education. So what do you plan to do at the federal level to help us to protect parental rights and education freedom like school choice?
Okay, so I like to say that we're the party of common sense. I mean, we're conservative and all of that. But walls are common sense, right? All of the things we're talking about, no men and women sports, no gender operation. I mean, there's these operations, it's crazy. You know, I don't know if you know, Europe has gone totally away from it now.
Yes, sir.
We're way behind them. They don't do it anymore. And this is just horrible. But who could even believe this is happening? So think of it. You have these parents that end up in fistfights at school meetings, and the parents mean well. They end up getting arrested, put in prison. I've seen things, especially Loudoun County, right? Loudoun County, it's a hotbed. Anybody from Loudoun? You know, I have the property. I have the big, great golf course there, right on the. I offered. You had the head of one of your groups that was very impressive to me, and I said, anytime you want to use my land along the Potomac River, right under the American flag. I mean, I have sort of an unlimited capacity there. It's a lot of acres, and it's miles along the Potomac. It's truly beautiful. But you know, I'm for parental rights all the way. I don't even understand the concept of not being.
Thank you.
No, but when you see some of the things...
Neither do we.
When you see some of the things, it doesn't... That's another, like, why would somebody want to have an open war? Why would when you see some of the things that they want people to do in these school boards, and they become like dictatorships, and the parents are screaming for the life of their child, a lot having to do with transgender, a lot having to do with a lot of other things. You've got to give the parents truly love the kids, okay? Some of these people on the boards, I think they don't like the kids very much, what they're doing. So you have to give the rights back to the parents. And I can't imagine it. Well, okay, this administration has been the opposite. This administration, it's like the FBI goes after the people, like it's some kind of an insurrection. It's
yes,
crazy.
Sir. They called us domestic terrorists, President Trump,
for
speaking out at school board meetings defending
Well, we'll
our
change
children.
that on the first day, I promise you. No, can you believe it? You are not a domestic terrorist or a terrorist. We do have terrorists coming in, and they're coming in by the thousands, but you're not one, Tiffany.
Thank you very much.
We'll get that changed. And the president can do that very easily. But you just wonder, where's the mindset to take the parents' rights? I see those meetings, and it does seem like Loudoun has a lot. Loudoun is the ultimate example of it. It's so vocal. But tell the people in Loudoun County, if you would like to be on the Potomac River, beautiful, having a picnic and talking about taking your rights back, where you're allowed to say, could my son study a little bit of arithmetic instead of something else?
Could we teach the kids to read?
That's correct.
That's right.
Yeah, let's teach them how to read, please. So, let them know that, though. That would be my honor.
I absolutely will, and thank you for that. We appreciate the support.
Thank you.
So, Tina Deskovich, the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, and I, we do a lot of interviews, and there's a lot of international interest, specifically Japan. We get asked for a lot of interviews, and we were talking with a reporter, and we said, why is there so much interest in Moms for Liberty in Japan? And he said, we are watching America's light dim. And we're very concerned, and we want to know what you're doing about it, and you guys are doing something. And so I feel like America is slipping back from the freedom and liberty and the beacon of light that we've been. So how will you take us forward again?
We're a nation in decline. We are. And it's because of the people that we have leading our nation. We are a nation. I say this, and I said it a little bit in 2016, and I meant it. We had a bad border, but it was like unbelievably good compared to what we have now. I mean, we had a bad border, but it was a regular bad border. This is a border the likes of which there's never been anything like it. This is a horrible, many people are killed coming up in the caravans. It's rough stuff. You go through snake country, you go through, it's just what happens. And by the way, remember I said rape when I first came? Yes. Well, rape is, massive percentages of women are being raped and just beat to hell coming up in the caravans. It's, I say this, look, this is a very sophisticated audience. Mothers give their girls big bottles of birth control pills because they know bad things are happening to their daughters coming up. And we're allowing it to happen. We're telling them, come up, we're going to give you education, we're going to give you this. We're getting them to come up. If you say the border is closed, and it is closed, people aren't going to even come up. Those journeys up, when you talk about death, many people are dying, especially women. Many people are dying on the trips up. They're being mutilated, and it is a nasty. And when I first came, I said, I used the word rape. I remember I got great marks for the speech when I first announced I was running. Remember that in the lobby of Trump Tower? And 2 days later, I think the Times called, did you say rape? I got great marks. They said it was a great speech. And then they said, did he say rape? And I said, yeah, I said rape. That's what's happening. Tremendous levels. And after that, it was like, that's when it all began. And it was like, incredible what they said. Well, what I said is nothing compared to what the fact is. It is It is a horrible thing. Those caravans are mean, mean. And, you know, you have people, 10 to 20, 25,000 people coming up in these massive caravans. And there's tremendous death and injury and problems that nobody would even believe. And we're causing this. But I did mention that word, and now everyone's saying, you know, Trump was right. Trump was right. But you have to go through hell, and you have to say it. And, you know, I respect you so much because you speak up. Like you said, no, we're all for that, right? Very few people would say what Tiffany said a couple of moments ago about something that was a little bit controversial, that shouldn't be controversial at all, but they just wouldn't do it. So when you said that, I said, that's refreshing to hear.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for taking the time to meet with so many of the victims' families of crime that we've seen. Lake and Riley's family, for example. I'm just going to ask, what is that experience like for you, meeting with the parents of children who are being killed by illegal immigrants?
It's terrible. They're being killed by illegal aliens. You know, there's no correct term because any term you use, they criticize you. You shouldn't use the word alien. You shouldn't use the word migrant. They want to take all the words away so that you can't talk about the subject anymore.
That's exactly right.
But Laken was this beautiful young woman who was savagely beaten and killed by a migrant. But there are many of them. There are many of them. I can tell you the parents will never be the same. I was at the border 3 days ago with 3 people, 2 where their child was killed, and 1 where she was badly injured. Beautiful woman. She was badly, badly hurt. They stole her car. She tried to stop them, and they ran her over, and this and that. She was, you know, thought she was going to be dead, but she had a terrible fracture of the head. And I mean, I had a case. It was very interesting. The 13 people that were killed in Afghanistan. You all know about that. That was grossly incompetent. Getting out was fine because I was going to get out. I would have been out before them, but we had an election that happened. But we would have been out with dignity and strength. We would have taken the military out last, not first. They took the military out first. But they had 13 people killed, and I got to know many of the families of the 13. It was a terrible, tragic thing. None of them should have died. Those people were essentially killed by a stupid administration that didn't know what they're doing, and bad generals like Milley, who was a bad general. And, you know, nobody was fired. It was the most incompetent. I think it's the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, the way it happened. You know, remember the planes taking off and people falling off the planes. Many people fell to their death. They were hanging onto the wings. You know, they probably thought they could take the plane and fly on the plane, and they didn't realize the plane's going 500 miles an hour. And they fell off at 3,000 feet. That's 3 times the height of the Empire State Building. They fell off. They started falling off, and then they all were off. And a lot of people, but it was a horrible, horrible moment. But you had 13 people killed, many people badly injured, meaning no legs. We had 1, no arm, no legs, and the arm that was left was battered. Face was badly hurt. And these are people, you know, this is just horrible casualties. But I got to know the people. I felt very badly, and they viewed me as their president, frankly. And I don't want to do anything about it. I don't want to say that, but they viewed me. And I you know, everybody knew because it was covered, but not covered like the press should cover it. I mean, the press doesn't talk about bad things. I mean, they don't talk about what happened in Afghanistan anymore with the Taliban, with that horrible leaving. It wasn't the leaving. It was great to leave because, you know, they were there for like 20 years and we were leaving, but we were going to keep Bagram, which is one of the biggest Air Force bases in the world. And we're keeping it not because of Afghanistan, but because of China, because it was 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. So we were keeping that. And it would have been fine, but it was time now to turn it over. Despite the threat to democracy, I did turn that over. I didn't say, they said, he'll never give it over. These people are crazy. They're crazy. But anyway, so I gave it over, and then they took over. And I didn't have anybody killed in Afghanistan for 18 months. I had a long talk with the head of the Taliban, who's really the boss. And his name is Abdul. And I said, Abdul, don't do it. Don't do it. You don't do it. And he said, but why, sir? Why do you send me a picture of my home? Abdul, you'll have to figure that one out. He went, but why do you send me a picture of my home, Your Excellency? He called me Your Excellency. And he was fine. Look, I said, you can't do it. You can't do it. You hit any. They had snipers that were killing our people. Our wonderful soldiers, you know, snipers from a long distance. And we didn't lose one person in 18 months. And then we had this catastrophe happen, which should have never happened. We had them in good shape, but we had to get out. It's ridiculous that we were there. And we left $85 billion worth of equipment. You know, they became brand new equipment, too. Equipment that I bought. They left brand new goggles, tanks, planes. We left it there instead of taking it out. I remember when Milley told me, General Milley, he's one of the woke guys, you know, he was saying, you know all about him, he's bad general. But he was saying, sure, I think we should leave the equipment behind. I said, why? Because I was talking about getting out. And I was going to get out. I brought it down to the number of men, but we had to keep Bagram. You got to keep the Air Force, the big base. Built many years ago for billions and billions of dollars. But he says, sir, we should leave the equipment behind. Why? Well, it's much less expensive. I said, wait a minute. We got a $150 million airplane, and we could fill it up with a little gas, a tank of airplane fuel, and fly it to Pakistan or fly it all the way back home. You think it's cheaper to leave it? And it's a new plane? You think it's cheaper? You think it's cheaper to leave Army tanks where we can put them in a trailer and take? Yes, sir, it's cheaper. I said, this guy is really bad. It's true. And that's when I lost total respect for the guy. I didn't have a lot because, you know, you never got good news. I want people where there's good news, you know? Like the general I used to knock out I knocked out 100% of ISIS. It was supposed to take 5 years. It took about 4 weeks, right? We have a great military. I'll tell you, I had a great general in charge of that, and he knocked the hell out of him. He said, sir, I can do it in about 4 weeks. They said, why didn't they do it before? Sir, they didn't want to really fight. They wanted to be politically correct, sir. But it was amazing. We have, I just say to this room, we have a great military. And our real military is not going to be woke. You couldn't convince them to be woke if you screamed at them all day for the next 10 years. But the guys on television are woke, and a lot of the top people are woke, but they'll all be gone pretty quick. They're going to all be gone. You get them out. You get them out.
When I was in Milwaukee, I got to meet some of the Gold Star families. And sir.
Yeah, we had a big problem. So I was called by these families. There were probably 4 of them. There was also somebody very badly injured with the legs and everything. And they asked me, would it be possible 2 days ago, right, to go to Arlington National Cemetery to celebrate the life of their children who had been killed 3 years ago. And this was the whole thing, the whole disaster in Afghanistan, where they set off a bomb and probably 500 people were killed altogether. And we got to think of the other side also, but it was a terrible thing. But we lost 13 soldiers. We had 45 soldiers that were really badly hurt, too. Nobody ever talks. You ever notice somebody loses their leg or both legs or their arm, in one case, an arm and 2 legs, and nobody ever talks about them. They talk about, because we have to remember that those people are, boy, nobody ever talks about them. And we had some people that were horrifically injured. Anyway, they called and they said, sir, would you be able to come? Now, I got to know them because I have a place in Bedminster, New Jersey, which is a spectacular place. And they wanted to know whether they like New Jersey. New Jersey is good. New Jersey has some of the most beautiful things. So this is a beautiful place. And I had most of the families there about 1.5 years ago. and they all wanted to know whether or not I'd be showing up. I didn't know if I could. And when I heard they were there, I went out and I saw them. And they thought I was going to stay for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, shake everyone's hand and leave. I ended up staying with them like for 4.5 hours. We listened to music up with the members. We have this beautiful deck overlooking everything. And you're looking at the sky, great food, a very luxurious place. I mean, it's beautiful. And we had, I don't know, like 20, 25 people, you know, members of the family of these 13 people, of most of the 13. And we ended up listening to music, Elvis and Elton John and everybody. And certain songs were very sad, and I'd point to the sky. I said, your son is looking down at you, and he's very proud. Oh, the people, it was like crazy. I was with him like for 4.5 hours. My 15 minutes, do you think we could get him to stay for 15 minutes? Could he sign something, a picture of my son? So I ended up staying there, and I got to know him. And I got a call a little while ago, like a week, 2 weeks, and they asked whether or not it would be possible to go to Arlington National Cemetery 2 days ago. And also, could I stay for the changing of the guard and the whole thing, which was beautiful. I did that. But it was very tough for me to get there because I was doing something else. I had to get out of something that was not easy to get out of. And I did that, and I did the changing, and then they said, could you come with us to the graves of, which is quite a bit away. You know, you had to go into cars and go into, you know, through the cemetery, beautiful Arlington Cemetery. And I did that, and I was getting absolutely killed because they're calling me. They're saying, sir, we got a lot of people waiting. I said, don't worry about it. Let them wait. And I did it. And they're looking at the graves, and they're explaining. One of the mothers was saying, and I've had this a lot, actually. Sir, could I tell you about my son? Yes. He said, sir, he was a good football player. He was a quarterback. He had a very strong arm. And, you know, he was playing another team, and it was a long story, and I just listened to it because I saw it was like therapy. She was so proud of him.
Oh, they loved you so much, President Trump. They had such wonderful things to say about you when we spoke. So they really appreciated that.
It was so good. But just so they said, sir, could you take some pictures with us at the graves of our child? And, you know, the child, because the child may be 22 or 24, but that's their child, right? They're not saying at the grave of the man. You know, there's nothing political or anything. This was their child. This was their baby. Could you take a picture with and these people are devastated. These people can never, ever be the same. And it was all because of Biden, okay? I'll get in trouble. I don't care. Get me in trouble. This should have never, ever happened. Nobody should have been killed. They should have left from Bagram, which is this massive base. They shouldn't have left from this little local airport where the whole city ends up piling in and everyone went crazy. And by the way, they shouldn't have taken the military out first. They should have taken the military out last when everything was gone. They took the military out, and I could just imagine Abdul, who's smart as hell. Somebody went to Abdul, and they said, Abdul, the American soldiers have left. He said, you're a stupid man to say that. Of course, that didn't happen. No, Abdul, they've left. I could just see it, the conversation. Then he found out they left. He said, I can't believe it. And once they left, they had a field day. What they did to us was incredible. But they kept everything. But thanks. So the people were coming up to me and said, sir, could I have a picture of you at the grave of my son? I said, absolutely. I would love to do that. So the whole family gathered around. We had the beautiful, you know, stone, the marble with the name of the soldier on. Shouldn't have been on it because they shouldn't have been dead. And we took pictures at the different grave sites. And that was it. It was beautiful. And they were all crying. Everybody was crying. You know, it was very sad. Terrible. It's even worse when there was no reason for it to happen. You know, it makes it even worse. It's one thing, it's a war. But here's the thing, it shouldn't have happened. Just incompetent. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country, but it shouldn't have happened. And these kids shouldn't have been dead. And the 45 people that were so badly hurt, and And frankly, the 300 people, mostly civilians from the other side, they shouldn't have been dead. Just a grossly incompetent group of people. So,
thank you for respecting our dead, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just to finish, so thank you very much. Appreciate it. So, but just to finish, so I took pictures. I said to people, should I tell this story? I told the story once today. I said, should I tell it? Because I think it's a terrible thing. So I stood with the mothers, the fathers, sometimes both, sometimes a sister. There was a sister, beautiful sister, who also had some difficulty because of a war injury. But I stood with different people over different graves and took pictures. I didn't want to take pictures, but I wanted to take them if they wanted to take them. And the former president of the United States is with them. They're very happy about that, as happy as they can be, because they'll never be happy. And I took pictures. And that was it. And I left, and we said goodbye, and it was beautiful, actually. And then I get a call that night, sir, we're getting a complaint from the White House that you used the soldiers for publicity pictures and for public relations. And I said, I can't believe it. And I said, I can't believe it. So here's a guy that he killed those people, okay? These people were killed by Biden as far as I'm concerned. And then I get a call, and I'm taking pictures. These are pictures with parents, etc., sisters, brothers, people that are laying in the ground right there, shouldn't be dead. And I get a call, and I actually got a lot of bad publicity. They said, President Trump spent time at Arlington National Cemetery taking pictures of things. It's just so disgusting. And I'll tell you, if you haven't noticed, I get a lot of publicity. I don't need that publicity. I don't need that publicity. It doesn't. I get a lot. I get too much. I'd like to have half the publicity. I want to hire a PR person to get me half the publicity, all right? But
that's not normally what you hire PR people for. But I'm sure you could find someone.
I just thought it was such a terrible thing.
So I just want to tell you, I think it meant an incredible amount to them. I know it did. They've spoken about it. And thank you for loving the American people. Thank you for working to make America great again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we thank you for your time today, spending time with us. I want to tell you, Moms for Liberty is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
And we only endorse in school board races. But I want to tell you personally, sir, that I endorse you for President of the United States.
Thank you, Tiffany. That's very nice. Wow. I didn't even expect that. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you.